Welcome to Meditating with John Vervaeke. I'm a cognitive psychologist and a cognitive scientist at the University of Toronto. I scientifically and academically study phenomena like mindfulness and related phenomena like insight, flow, mystical experience, transformative experience, higher states of consciousness, the cultivation of wisdom. I've also been practicing Vipassana meditation, metta contemplation, Tai Chi Chuan, and Qigong for over 29 years and teaching them professionally for close to 20 years. This is a course. Welcome. You're welcome to stay with us, but if you've joined us for the first time, you can check the notes in the description for this video and you will find links to previous sessions. And they're broken up into two playlists. There are lessons there where you can go and see the principles I've taught, and then just sits. Because this course is broken up in the following manner. Every Monday is a Dharma day. I will teach an important principle, a new skill. We'll do usually an exercise to practice it and get a direct experiential understanding. Then we'll sit together, and then there'll be Q&A. And then Tuesday through Friday, we meet. I'll do a bit of review. We sit together, and then there's Q&A, usually a little bit longer at the end of those. And that's every weekday at 9:30 EST. For the Q&A, please limit your questions to questions about the practice, meditation, contemplation, etc. Vipassana and metta. For more general questions, you're welcome to join me today. It'll be posted on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Also, a notification on my channel that we're going to have a live streamed Q&A for more general questions, broader questions, and that's at 3 p.m. EST today. All right, so I think those are all the announcements we need for right now. Please get yourself into your posture. Set your phones on Do Not Disturb. And we'll begin when I say the word begin. Begin. Slowly come out of your practice, trying as best you can to integrate what you cultivated in your practice with your everyday consciousness and cognition. Coming out of your sit is part of the practice. All right, so let's take a look at some questions that people might have. I have a question from the Mad Truth. Is it necessary to count during Find Your Focus? I often find that doing so pulls my attention from my breath to the words I'm counting. No. If you can just sort of note, some people say letters, or some people just sort of find a rhythm. But if you have some way of noting when you've had a continuity of mindfulness, that's fine. So as long as you've got something that says, oh, remember sati, to remember, to remind, oh, that's what it was like to be in a momentum of mindfulness. Jason, can you refresh the screen, please? It's super large. Sorry, we're just having a minor technical difficulty. Okay, it's done. Thank you. Marta Kayevet. Okay, this is from Rainer Ludwig. I seem to be able to focus my breath, but still notice one or two thoughts passing through my mind at the same time. Does this means I'm not focusing correctly? Probably not. That's probably what I mean when I say, right? You have your breath. Following your breath is center stage, and it's taking up the majority of your awareness. And then sort of more backgrounded, peripheral, and more fleeting is your monkey mind. But if you can honestly say, oh no, I kept the center and the majority center staged on my breath, then you are definitely focusing. It's only when you feel that sort of the majority of my mind gave priority to what my monkey mind was doing that you've actually been distracted. Andre Ferreira, it's good to see you, Andre. While doing baby breaths, trying to breathe using abdomen rather than chest, I let the body breath this way on its own, but I feel like I'm stretching and contracting the belly without much air flowing in or out. At the ends, the end of intake and exhale. Am I overusing the muscles or doing something incorrectly? Do you have any advice? You might be pushing it towards the end, and that's a possibility, and then you might be being too directed, too directive, I should say, of your breathing. But it also might be that you're tracking your breathing very well, because there is actually some meditation traditions actually break up following the breath into, you feel the expansion, there's a pause, and there's that gap, and then you feel the contraction, there's a pause, and you feel that gap. This tradition doesn't do that, but you might be noticing that gap. You might be, so that's particularly used within some pranayama traditions, especially, but you might be noticing that gap. If you feel like you're overstretched, if you feel like you're just doing it naturally, it might be that what's happening is you're actually noticing that extension in that brief pause. So if you feel like you're pushing it, then of course try to let it go even more to be as natural as possible. But if you can honestly say, no, I'm not pushing it, it's just happening naturally, you might be noticing that pause and actually feeling that period when your abdomen is extended or contracted, and that might be making it more salient for you. And if that's the case, instead of thinking of it as a negative thing, oh no, think of it as a positive thing. It's, oh no, I'm tracking my breath so well, I'm actually picking up on that pause, and I'm just getting that sense of expansion and then the sense of contraction. Kira Kroger, when I'm noticing in things, I've started to notice a lot of what I've started to call storytelling, usually about my past. That seems significant, but not sure why. Any thoughts? That is because what's happening is you are triggering what's called your default mode network. So your brain is basically oriented two ways. It's task oriented, and there's a couple networks around that. And this is when your attention is out and directed on a task, like when you're following your breath. But typically, when we disengage from the world and close our eyes, especially if we close our eyes, but even when we're just disengaging, we get mind wandering. That's another network. That's called the default mode network, and it's adaptive. It has very important functions. That's why we spend so much time in it. And that default mode network is basically very self-referential. It's about we tell stories, we do mental time travel, so you're telling lots of stories about the past. This is very normal. Some people, Robin Carhart Harris and other cognitive scientists, think the default mode network is where we're building a lot of what in a lot of these traditions is called the ego, this sort of self-referential, autobiographical thing that we identify with, and that is sort of constraining and modifying all of our other cognition. And part of what might be going on is in meditation, we're triggering that, but we're also triggering the task focus network, and we're bringing them together so that we can get a new configuration. We can get something beyond, because normally when one shuts on, when one turns on, the other shuts off. They go like this, right? And we're trying to do this. And so it's very normal for all of this time travel and storytelling to come up. But if you keep breaking up its automaticity, you get more and more the capacity that these might actually interweave with each other. And that brings about a profound kind of insight and change. It has the capacity to radically transform your sense of self and your sense of being in the world. Austin Collins, during meta, should I be having a discussion with myself about the categories that I'm assigning and assuming? He's a friend. What role does he do? What else could he be? Yes. So, Austin, this is part of a general thing that I tell people, because it is kind of confusing, because, well, I'm not supposed to be, talking in my mind. The one thing that's excluded from that, and this is like the raft in the Buddhist tradition. The Buddha told a story about a man who builds a raft to get across a river. And once he's across the river, he holds on to the raft. The raft is useful while you're on the river. It's transitional. But once you get to that place, you don't need the raft anymore. You have to put it away. But it's also wrong to say, well, I don't need a raft, and try to walk through the river right from the beginning. So at the beginning, you have to coach yourself. You have to talk yourself. This is how we learn a lot of skills. We talk to ourselves and we coach ourselves. If your inner speech is coaching speech, it is fine. But try to, and if you watch good coaches, at first they talk a lot and then they slowly diminish, because you don't have to talk to yourself. When you walk into a room and sit down, you don't have to say, okay, move this leg, move that leg, look around, sit down. You've built up the skill, and then what you do is you use the skill. So coaching yourself, inner speech for coaching is completely legitimate. It's a raft, but don't get attached to it. Expect it gradually, very gradually, to diminish until you can just do those things without having to talk to yourself. Just like you can look around a room to see what's different without having to talk to yourself. Dennis Mantis, not sure if I'm doing meta correctly. I reviewed the lesson, but after each mantra, it's somewhat difficult to identify specific thoughts related to my role or model. Should I pause longer? Yes, pause a bit longer, but perhaps also don't think that the only thing you should be finding are thoughts. You should be finding feelings. You should be finding places where your attention goes in your body, or where your attention wants to go in your memory or in the world. Those are also ways in which you get answers to your questions. So pause longer and broaden your scope of what counts as a response to your question. So everyone, thank you very much for joining. I want to thank my dear friend and techno mage, Amar, my beloved son, Jason. Please subscribe to the channel to be notified of the next video, to be notified of the Q&A. Also there you will find videos on mindfulness, on insight, higher states of consciousness, mystic experience, the cultivation of wisdom, responding to the meaning crisis in general in society, and things that would help you to incorporate this practice into your life much more comprehensively and transformatively. I'm doing this to really try and help people. And so I invite you to share this with as many people as you can, because that will help me to help as many people as I can in these difficult and challenging times. Reminder, we're doing this every weekday morning at 9:30 EST. Mondays are Dharma days, in which I teach. Tuesdays through Friday, we sit. Every day has a Q&A at the end. Links to previous lessons and sits can be found in the notes. And a reminder that later today at 3 p.m., we'll have the general Q&A being live streamed. Thank you very much for your time and attention, everyone. Keep practicing.